But Grover, I see what you said is really important, because if we don't, and I've said this to people higher up in different corporations around here, that when we do not bring like people that are in long-term recovery, we can't have a discussion around this crisis unless we have people that have lived experience. And that's with any kind of subject. I mean, I lost my cousin to the disease of addiction like 14 years ago. Do I know all the specifics? No, because that family kept it so secret. They were in Ohio that I find out that, he's in a coma and then he dies. But that you are now saying that two very close neighborhoods are completely different until we know and come over here and listen to what is really going on here, because you have to keep asking the reason, well, why is this different than over here? And then continue to ask, but why here, but why here? So I think it's so, see, when this happens and Walt says it's serendipity, this was supposed to happen this way. And
the beautiful thing was too is that we were,
I know.
we were, where was I don't know where I was, but I said, Nancy, I'm sorry, I'm going to offend people. And she said, what are you going to say? I'm like, look, until rich white kids started dying from this, we just all of a sudden,
right.
I said, young men and women of color have been dying from this years before. I said, but once a few rich white kids die, boom, it's on the front page of the paper, and then it's a problem.
Yeah.
See, the thing is, like, I agree with you on that. Like, a lot of people, even today, it's people like, well, what about crack? Why are you doing this? And the thing is, what most people don't know, it is an epidemic. And the reason why Will says an epidemic, we being targeted. Like, these people are dying, and a lot of black people will say, well, that doesn't affect my neighborhood. Yes, it does. I got 20 friends in jail right now. Like, we're being targeted for this. I've been targeted. I've been called out when I wasn't even involved in drugs, targeted by law enforcement. Like, we the targets now. They say, oh, these white kids are dying, we gotta get these guys off the street. So like, we are the target of what's going on, and a lot of people never look at the other side of how it affects our community. Our kids, dads are in jail. Like, that's why things are getting the way they are. Like, kids growing up on their own, their mothers are on drugs, the dads are in jail. Like, we becoming a target. So when people see the epidemic side of it, they just think about rich white kids dying. What I see is young black fathers going to prison. Like, I see it a totally different way. Like, we have to, right. Right, so I'm not even looking at it as the rich white kids dying. I'm looking at it as the young black future community leaders, the young black future fathers are going to prison, like, for selling this stuff. So, that's how I look at it. If we can get rid of that demand for this drug, we won't have so many people jumping off the porch into this game. So, I look at it from a different side.
But we agree, because, you remember in the 90s when crack, they weren't arresting, you get arrested with an 8-ball of powder cocaine and you'd get 3 months. You'd get arrested with 4 grams of crack.
I got arrested with 0.8 grams of crack, and that was given 7 years in prison.
It's ridiculous. Yeah. The sentencing guidelines.
I went from college, playing football for Marshall University, coming home for a summer, trying to make a few extra dollars to get me back to school, to 7 years in prison for $40 worth of crack.
It's insane. You can't say that's not racist. You can't say that addiction's not racist.
Well, and see, then that brings up another conversation that can be very uncomfortable for people. And that's whether or not are people gonna go where it's discomfort, but if we talk through it and understand and start to see it from a different point of view than just one way of looking at it, we could start being able to, look at things and correct things on a multiple level. But this is how you do it when you have these conversations, and then you go to discomfort, but you have to go through that discomfort to find answers to it too.
I think it's just, for a lot of people, it's almost too terrible to think that people are being targeted and they're addicted to a drug. That, I think just that sort of I think for a lot of people, it's just, they block that out. They can't move past that step of that's what's happening. That's what the data's showing. That's what's happening to people, Yeah.
Well, and it's like I said, there is stigma around all of that. There's stigma around even being able to step outside your comfort zone and understand, okay, this group is being targeted, and then here is what's happening. We're burying these people. So all of that is stigma. It's all stigma, and it's all, when we don't understand, then we fear it. And that's part of what we're trying to do here is say, if you're going to fear it, then it's not going to get any better. And the more that you will let yourself get educated and understand all the layers, because this crisis, and now we're calling it a crisis of addiction, and we're saying you have to understand it on multiple levels, because it's not, you can't put it just in a box like, okay, if we solve the opioid, this other stuff won't happen. I mean, you just can't do it that way.
I say it all the time, right? I say at the end of this conversation, if you're not uncomfortable and filled with hope, you weren't paying attention. Because addiction, you said addiction does this. Here's what I love about addiction. This is the one positive thing about addiction. It crosses over racism, economic marginalization, environmental injustice, community disenfranchisement, the assumption of privilege. Mm-hmm. And what I mean by that is and I was with a group of people where I was the only person in the room without, everybody had PhDs or MDs, and I have a college degree, BA, and I was like, it's the assumption of privilege. And they're like, what are you talking about? I'm like, all of you are white, all of you have PhDs or MDs, and you're gonna go into marginalized communities of color and poor white people and poor African Americans and Latinos and tell them what the solution is? Let me tell you what, we've been there and we've done that. Because I grew up very poor because my father was an alcoholic and died when I was young. And addiction just killed one of my brothers, is killing one right now. But addiction, it's like if this tabletop were addiction, we can't just talk about treatment. We have to talk about culturally relevant treatment.
Mm-hmm. Right.
White counselors, I remember, and I worked in DC as an addictions counselor, and every face that came to me for help was a person of color. And I used to have to say, I would acknowledge, I know this is very weird, I'm a white dude, and I'm here as your counselor. And so people are coming in already, there's an imbalance of power. There's already discomfort in the room. There's already racism in operation. And I feel like the gift of addiction is that it forces us, because you go into the rooms of recovery, and you know this, in DC, I'd go to a meeting and there'd be people driving up in BMWs. The mayor of DC would come to the meeting and there'd be homeless folks coming in off the street. And you know what? We're all in this room to try to not get high. So in some ways, recovery is the response of not blind. I don't mean colorblind. We have to acknowledge color. We have to acknowledge race. We have to acknowledge poverty. We have to acknowledge the inherent structural issues going on with sentencing guidelines, and that we're talking about the drug courts. There aren't a lot of people of color in the drug courts. It's still white kids being put in
0.8 grams. I actually go to drug court. They told me we don't take drug dealers in drug court. I had $50 worth of crack. It's like, no, yeah.
I have to watch my language because I want to say that's effed up, but I don't want you to have to bleep it.
Yeah. To me, a lot of people, treatment is one thing, but who wants to go to treatment? When you come out of treatment, what do? What's the reward? What's the benefit? What's the hope? What's the thought process that you can go to treatment and stop doing what you're doing and actually have a normal, successful life and actually be a part of society? So, we still have to be able to provide different kind of resources, different kind of things to get young people from saying, I'm going to sell drugs, give them opportunity, give them something to keep young people from saying, I'm gonna do it. Most drugs a lot of people talk about gateway drugs and stuff like that. I really don't believe in that. Drugs really come from people with nothing to do. And I started selling drugs because it was nothing to do. That's the only thing that going on in my community. When I grew up, my daddy sold drugs, my uncle sold drugs. So that's what I seen. That was normal. It was totally normal for me. I didn't think people say, "Oh, you're a bad guy. Or you're just a drug dealer." No, I'm not. I did what any person would do, what any baby does. They watch. They do what they saw. They do what's around them. That's all I ever saw. I never saw a successful black person before in my neighborhood with a nice car and a nice home and nice clothes and nice things, unless they were a drug dealer. And that's what they let you do. They let these people get successful. That's all part of the system. They call it the trap. And it's called that for a reason. That's all I ever saw. So they want you to see these one or two people successful. The city, they know who the drug dealers are. They know where the drugs are. If they wanted to go get them off the street, they would. But that's not what they want. Because if you end that cycle, then there's nothing else. I think we probably get more money as a city for preventing crime and treatment of these things. So if you take them away, you take away all the money, you take away a lot of funding, you take away a lot of, it's just based, it's set up for us to lose. So, I mean, it's not, I didn't want to be a drug dealer. I didn't, you know what I mean, want to do stuff. That's all I was saying. When I was little, my dad used to hold me on his lap. He had a gun on the table and he had a tray and a razor blade and he was bagging up crack. Like, I mean, that's how I grew up. So did I think I was wrong for selling these drugs? No.
Right.
I told you what changed. I started to see people die. I mean, literally die. Like, they talking to you and they dead like a minute later. And like, that kind of changed my life. A lot of people haven't had a chance to see that or experience that, but money is definitely not more important than somebody's life. We just, like what I do now, like I have some things that I do called a neighborhood hope dealer.
Right.
Basically, I can have a clothing line that says neighborhood drug dealer and the D is crossed out with an H. And like, I try to inspire people that are, you know what I mean, in the street doing things that you can do something else. I just ran for city council last election cycle. Like you know what I mean, I'm doing a lot of different things, you know what I mean? And like, I'm sitting at the table with people that people listen to me when I talk. People call me like, man, we want to hear what you got to say. Can you come be a part of this? So like, to know that, I just try to inspire other people. It's like, look, dude, you don't need that. Like, you can do something else, but there's no hope and no belief in our community. It's just like, this is what we're going to do, and this is what it is.
But see, I mean, like Grover, I knew I had met you because I recognized your face. But see, just those kinds of things. So I'm thinking, okay, now how can I, as just one person, connect what you're doing and say, all right, to other people that I know that are just in the city, like even in the city school system, and say, do you know what's happening? And how can we support these, what I call these very small grassroots kind of efforts, so people can just even hear about it and listen and say, okay, because everything you said is absolutely true. I mean, you know, babies are born and no one's born thinking a certain way. Whoever that adult in their life is the one that's going to be teaching. The kids are always watching and listening, even though we don't think they're always listening. Oh yeah, they're watching and listening to us all the time. I mean that's what we do. That's what babies do. That's what kids do. And it's the adults there. And you know, basically you're saying I got to break this cycle because I believe there needs to be this 2 and 3 generational education around some of this stuff. Because you can't just say, all right, we're going to teach all the kids in the schools and they're going to go home and change everything at home. That can't happen. It can't happen that way.
Or we say don't do drugs or here drugs are bad, right. And then all of a sudden that's great in the schools during the day, but then they go home and there's not enough food on the table. Mm-hmm. Dad may be in prison, mom may be struggling, you know, or mom may not be existing and dad's raising 2 kids, 2 jobs. I mean, we have to take into the account the whole environment.
Yeah.
I mean, addiction doesn't happen in a vacuum, but we talk about it a lot of times as if it does. Like it's just about the drugs. No, there's I mean, again, if you're, I mean, I when I bartended, you know, and I was a couple hundred short on rent, I just go pick up a shift and I paid my rent, and I could still do drugs, and I'd get tipped in drugs, so I was making cash and in drugs, and then I was a driver and did security for a coke dealer in DC, and the way we did it was it was a white guy. I'd put on a suit and drive around. And no cops gonna pull over a white dude in D.C. in a suit. They didn't. So we played the race card the other way. I'd have $10,000 of cocaine in my trunk, and I'm driving around in a suit. I'm a drug dealer. I'm driving around a drug dealer in the back seat. So, and I also, you know, I've been homeless. I've eaten out of dumpsters. You know, I worked my way through college to finally get a degree, and so yeah, I mean, I always say when people look and there's the assumption of the tattoos that I'm a bad person, or if I'm white that I'm super educated, I've never tasted poverty. I mean, I lived in 8 homes in 2 years. I used to get my, oops, almost slipped again. I used to get my rear end kicked all the time because everybody was high in my home and they were fighting. So like you said, and that's what I learned. I learned violence was an answer. Violence was a solution. Violence is a tool. Drinking, when you don't feel good, go get high. Go get high.
Yeah, and I mean, I think, going back to your point, I think, you know, a lot of people, when they look at a certain problem, it's, and this is, I don't think this is true for really any problem, really any sort of policy issue, but when they look at a certain policy issue, they want to believe that there is that one magic solution. And I don't, like, this is just one of those where that just absolutely is not the case. I'd love to be able to come out and be like, I mean, I've only done a little bit of research for the paper that I did in college, but you know, even that is just like, it's still like, I think there are steps that we can take. I think decriminalization is a huge step that we need to take. It seemed to work in other European countries, and obviously there isn't a lot of data in America, and those are two different areas, so you know, take that with a grain of salt. But I think that's a really important thing, is that because when they did it in a lot of these European countries, like Portugal, they started in Portugal, what they found is that they were taking all this money that they were keeping people locked up with, and they were able to take that and turn it into addiction treatment. You know, and you know, we could discuss, you know, the state of rehab in America, absolutely, but like, I think that's, you know, that's something that I think is really important to consider. What does everybody else think? Sorry.
Greed and race. That's why the experiment in Portugal wouldn't work in America, because of greed. Free markets, when you take a necessity and throw capitalism behind it, and I'm going to business school, so when I say this, please understand I'm finishing up an MBA. So, is in Portugal, they stopped calling addicts criminals, and they started calling them patients. And they stopped locking them up, and they started treating it like a public health crisis. But in Portugal, it's a much more equitable society to begin with. It's a small country. So it's, in a smaller country, it's easier for the solutions to be spread around. So I'm not discrediting it, but what I'm saying is, it was already an equalized society. We are so, I mean, I voted twice for President Obama, and you know, and then to see now President Trump in the White House, and to see how literally the message is flipped. It's going from this extreme, regardless of your politics, it's going from over here to over here in 4 years. And that's insane. And so we can't even, and I said this, I don't need to, what I believe about you is way different than how I treat you. So even, and again, I practice what I preach. I may not like somebody's politics, but how I actually treat them is all that matters to me. And I can treat everyone with kindness and tolerance. And whether I agree with your opinion or not, I can sit and listen and say, hey, teach me. Because we can talk about policy, but then I want to turn around and say, and what's it doing for that street corner across the street?
Yeah.
And it's not your fault, but the fact of the matter is most policymakers aren't thinking, what is that doing for the people across the street? Now, you ran for city council, which is the best way to do it. You want to make a difference in a place like Roanoke, city council's it. But even then, did you win? I'm sorry, I didn't know.
I didn't. Well, I ain't gonna say I definitely didn't win. I did actually really good, considering.
Did you? So I just moved back to Roanoke, and when I was a child here, and I left when I was 16. So, and I'm 51 now, so it's been a while. But what area would you run to represent?
See, that might have been like the biggest thing that probably cost me from winning. Like, people did single me out to a neighborhood. It was the media. Everything I went to do, every time, every story, every interview was, oh, you represent Northwest. Like, no, like, I'm representing every single person.
Did you run at large?
That's the same. Like, we don't do wards in Roanoke. Okay. So
it's like they do them in D.C.
Yeah, we don't have wards, but it was like so many people was like, well, if he wins, the only thing he cares about is this area, and it's like, it's not the case. I really don't care about what neighborhood, what street, what area. Like, I'm about the people that are out here struggling are facing the same thing. Like, the addiction for the drug users is just as big for the drug dealers. I remember plenty of times I didn't even have drugs, but I was out there on the block every day where they sold drugs. I didn't even have drugs. It was the addiction. Like, you get a rush every time that your phone ring, and then, or every time your pager went off, it was the same addiction that the person that was using getting it, probably even bigger, probably even worse. So I'm trying to represent those people, the people that actually that are addicts, like, that grow, like, they don't treat what's going on. Like, most of us are like deal with like PTSD, like, to a certain degree, and we're not treated that way. We just treated as just criminals. And like, that's what makes it hard. Like, our people are hurting, and one thing I've learned is hurt people. And as long as people are hurting, like, we're just gonna keep, you've never seen a person that wasn't hurting, that wasn't going, what do you call it, mental illness? Mental illness is a form of hurt. It's a form of reaching out, it's a form of So I mean, whatever reason, you just don't find perfectly normal people that are happy in life that hurt other people. And if you just look at it, the people that are hurting people, the people that's going to these schools, shooting these schools, they hurt. They calling out, they reaching out. So I mean, we have to start dealing with these things before the fact. And we can't wait till this guy goes and shoots up the school. It's too late. What can we do at this point? We just have to start finding these things earlier. Just in the schools, as far as the schools go, we need people in the schools that in the system that can see these things coming before they come. I mean, you could talk about numbers and data all day, but if we're not going to actually use the data, use what we're getting back from these reports and from these investigations, well, if we're not going to use what we learn, it's just pointless. They just want to make a stat, want to make a show, want to make a statement just to make people feel good. But I mean, at the end of the day, we're not fixing anything.
I mean, we said it. We would debrief. I'd go into the classroom, and when I was talking, and what I was talking about was my story and how my childhood, I was diagnosed with PTSD when I was 19. And I always make a statement that it was non-combative PTSD because I don't want to disrespect those who have been diagnosed with PTSD from battle. But this is a war field out here. It was a war field in my home. 3 older brothers and a father who was 6'1", 250 and liked to use my face as a punching bag. So, but then my point is I'd be in the classroom talking and I'd see these kids and I'm like, I could tell which kid was going home to a troubled environment and to pain because there's just this look, there was just this thing like, there's something going on in your home that's not right. There's pain, and like you said, hurt people, wounded people.
Just let them go home.
Let them go home.
Yeah.
So it doesn't matter what I
see all
say,
of
if
the
he's going home to
signs.
this, he's going to
You
go
see
home
all
and
of
get
the
his ass
signs,
kicked.
you just let it go. And what they do is they use those numbers. They take kids' reading scores. That's how they figure out how many prisons they need to build. Off of 3rd grade reading scores, test scores. Like, we saw this problem, 3rd grade, we saw the stats, we know that we need to build 10 more prisons because the odds is that 80%, 50% of these kids are going to be in prison. So we already saw it in the 3rd grade, but did we do anything to fix it, to stop it? No, we saw it, and what we did was go build another prison. We did nothing to try to fix it, to try to stop it, to try to, it's 3 words, are you okay? That can change people's lives, and like we never even take the time out to do that.
It's funny, one of the things I always say to people is, how can I help? That's what I say to people, same thing. Because, you know, what's funny is in the 90s, I had a friend who started an after-school program, and two of my friends started it, a former Black Panther from the 60s, and this was sort of his retirement, and a Latino friend of mine. And the Latino friend and I, we actually rented a house together, and I helped co-parent his kids. His wife was Black. So his kids were biracial. He had an adopted son from Africa, and I was sort of the male nanny. I kind of lived with them and took care of the kids. But they were saying in the mid-90s that studies showed that young boys of color, specifically boys of color, that you could tell if we didn't engage them by the 2nd grade that they were going to drop out. So I'm saying, well, then why are we doing these programs in the 7th grade? Kids are already lost.
Exactly.
You just told me that you lose them by the 3rd grade. Before they enter the 3rd grade, we've already lost them. Why aren't we working at kindergarten and pre-kindergarten? Don't tell these 7th and 8th grade programs are a waste of money. They're a waste of money.
It's too late.
So somebody can pat them on the back and say, look at these prevention, no offense, but look at these prevention programs we have. It's too late.
It's too late. That's what I do is I deal with kids. And the reason why I deal with kids is exactly what you say. It's too late. You can't get, by the time I was in the 8th grade.
You already made, yeah, things were already set, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
in 8th grade, I had
learned.
$10,000 under my bed in the shoebox. What can you tell me? You know what I mean? I was an 8th grader.
I don't think I'm laughing because I don't
What was it
have
you could tell me?
$10,000
It was nothing you could tell me. I mean, literally, it's nothing you could tell me. My mom used to come to me all the time like, son, it's like, mama, listen, you work every day. You make $30,000 a year on a good year. In 5 years, you made $150,000. I made that in a week. So if I go to prison for 5 years, I made $150,000. So what? I come home, I do it again, I make another $150,000. I'm still, like, you only think about, as a kid, you only think about money as what you base your success off of. And it was like, Mom, like, what's the point? I'll go to jail for these few years. When I come home, I'll have $150,000. You've been working for 10 years, you don't have that. You know what I mean? So it was no way, if you couldn't tell me anything, it was nothing that you could say to me. Nothing.
Well, and see, I think there is part of the population that thinks, okay, well, we can do all this stuff, we can put all these resources in schools, but school is just one part of a kid's life. So how do we put these resources in, make it into the community, and like you said, at a very early age? How do we wrap things around so that there can be, family by family, a way to, come up to that next step?
We have to start using things that exist as platforms. Like for instance, I coach sports. I have my own whole football league. I have my own basketball league. Like part of what I do, with my kids and my teams, the kids are required on every Wednesday. They're required to come. We're not on the field. We're somewhere, we're doing homework, we're talking, we're doing different things. We have to implement these things into different programs that exist, make it mandatory. Your kids shouldn't be able to go play basketball all day long after school without them learning about things, without having conversations with them about certain. We have to just make certain stuff mandatory and part of what's going on. I mean, that's how we can easily reach the kids. It's a lot of things that's out here for the youth, but we don't make stuff mandatory. It's even after school programs. They'll tell you we recommend homework, but we don't require it.
Don't require. Kids don't have homework. I was like, what?
If you can't come to I have an after school program at the Hope Center. You can't come if you don't have a book bag, you have to go home. And I don't allow the kids to come in and say I don't have homework. If you don't have a book bag, you're not allowed to come through my door. And I don't ask do they have homework. I say give me your book bag. I go to each kid one by one, give me your book bag. I sit beside them. I open their book bag. I take everything in there out, and I go through their book bag every day, one kid each, one by one by one. I don't allow the kids to say I don't have homework, or allow the parents to drop their kid off and use me as a babysitter or whatever, so they can go do whatever they're doing. If you don't got a book bag, go back and get in the car and tell your mama to take you back home. And we can make these things mandatory. We can get to these kids early. The people just don't apply themselves.
Well, it's true. I mean, you set the boundaries and say this is the way it's going to be, and then pull in those, and then if there's opportunities for the moms, the dads, the grandmothers to see that kind of stuff, then they can come alongside and say, we can have these boundaries at home too. And the most important thing right now is getting your education and make it around. But I mean, what you're doing, this is
education is more than the school.
Exactly.
Education is telling them about what's outside of this door when they walk out this door.
Yeah.
We're not teaching, we're not preparing them for this. And until you go outside this door right now, you can just sit in here and look out this window.
Right.
And I promise you, since we've been recording, we've had at least 20 addicts walk past this window. Just the time we've been sitting right here. We're not preparing our kids for what's outside those doors.
How do you prepare kids for something that, because teach kids 2 + 2 = 4, there's a codified idea. How do you teach kids that going to prison is a really bad and dangerous thing? How do you teach kids that getting your high school diploma, trying to get your college degree? That's very, very important. What do you think are some strategies that
you show them? You don't let them learn about it on the internet or what they see on TV. What they see on TV ain't real. You see prisons and on TV all the time. You see people on drugs on TV. It's not real. Let them see what's real. Let them see what I saw. Let them see a mother and a son and a daughter all with a needle sticking out their arm. Let them see it. Show it to them. I'm so real with my kids. I don't sugarcoat anything. I show them the truth. I teach them the truth. I take them out here. We go out here. We walk through these neighborhoods. They get to see. I let them see these people running up and down the street like this, walking down the street like they're helicopter, literally running and flying, spinning around in circles. I let them see it. I let them talk to them. I let them experience. Bring these kids. Let them see it. That's the only. When I grew up, my mom. I heard you say something about the Samaritan Inn. My mom, she started the Samaritan Inn with Wayne and his wife in Georgia when they first started it. And back in the day, that's where I grew up. I grew up in the Samaritan Inn, 5 years old, serving these people. So I got a chance to see some stuff. It held me tight for a long time, and what's in you is always gonna come back out. I just ran into, it was a time my brother went to college. I never forget, his first year he graduated, went to college, Hampton University. And I went down with him, and it was beautiful. It was right on the ocean, and it was beautiful. He was so happy. And I remember the second year, it was time for him to go back to college. And we loaded up the car and packed up all of the stuff, and he went. And the next day, I woke up, the car was pulling back in the driveway, and all this stuff was still in the car. His box was still packed, everything was still in there. And And like what I see, my mother, she didn't have the money to get him back into school, but my mom has a really strong faith, and she believed that, you know what I mean, if God want her son to be there, it's gonna work. And she didn't tell him that. She packed him up in the car and took him to school.
Right.
And I watched him come back home, and he really wasn't, like academically, he wasn't me. Like we're totally different. I was a straight A student, like kind of gifted, like, you know what I mean, educationally wise. And when he came back home, that changed my life. That's what turned me in the streets. It was like, I would never ask my mom. I would never forget I was in the 8th grade. And it was like, when it's time for me to go to college, I never filled out an application. I never mentioned college to my mom. I did not want to even I know how bad that hurt me. So I didn't even want to bring that back up to her to even make her feel that kind of way. So I went to the street. I never asked my mom for nothing. It was like, I don't want to see that pain that I saw her come home with, like, and my brother come home with, for her not to be able to send her kid back to school. My brother, like, wow, like it was the greatest thing in my life, and now it's over. So when it was my time, I'm not going to mom. I'm going to go out here. I'm going to do it my way. And I kind of missed out on a lot of things. So I mean, that was the biggest thing that really affected me.
You know, it's funny. I'm sitting here, and I always try to make connections, no matter what I'm hearing, no matter, you know, when I talk about treatment with people, I say treatment and recovery aren't the same thing, because recovery is about coping skills. Recovery is about learning boundaries. Recovery is about discipline. Recovery is about replacing poor choices and the reasons I made poor choices with good choices. And if you take kind of those things that I just said, it works. The after-school program.
I mean, it's like we give vaccines for all these different things, right? We want to prevent you from getting the measles. We want to prevent you from getting all of these things. We vaccinate you. We're treating you for these things before you experience them. It's the same thing. Once a person's on drugs, it's too late to treat them. We can't wait to treat them. We have to treat this. It's the same way we have to treat them before they're sick. We have to treat them before they're addicted. We have to treat them before they're out here doing what they're doing. We have to treat them before. It's the same. We want to prevent polio. We want to prevent all. They make your kid get 8 vaccines to prevent all of these things, and we treat them before they have the measles. We treat them before they have any of these things.
New York City right now.
Yeah.
Because there's a measles outbreak.
So now we wait till they're strung out on drugs, and then we say, let's treat them.
Right. But it is like there needs to be so many doses of this. It's exactly like it's inoculation. And what you're doing at a very grassroots effort is our parenting program that we use, and we're doing it at the Western Regional Jail with the moms. It's technically called a social developmental model. But what you're doing is helping, and what we want to do is help these moms so they don't come back and say, okay, here are the things that you didn't get because you didn't learn that, and how can you have this bond with your kids or with kids in the neighborhood? And you're setting clear boundaries for them, and hopefully then maybe their caregivers, whoever they are, uncle, aunt, grandmother, grandpa, mom, dad, that they're going to see, oh, so he's saying this to my kids, so we need to have the same kind of stuff going on so that this kid sees over and over and over again, this is because I love you and I want to protect you. And it's like having a vaccine.
That's what it takes.
Yeah.
It takes doses. We have to start giving them doses, giving them doses. We can't wait till they have the measles and it's everywhere. Now everybody has the measles. We can't wait till everybody has it.